Hello, dear spectators. This is Atilla Yeşilada, representing Real Turkey Channel and reaching out to you from his home office in one of the quieter suburbs of Istanbul, far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. I really hesitated before I recorded this video because my brief answer to the question I'm going to pose in a second would be no. But I suppose for those of you who are not very savvy about the affairs of the Middle East or the map, the headlines might have raised the question whether Israel and Turkey can go to war. Two events motivated this video. First, Mr. Erdogan is an anti-Semite and one of the leading non-Arab enemies of Israel, and of course, the very ugly, tragic war that started after the 7th of October Hamas raid on Israeli civilians have raised his anger. And he has been making threats on Israel since then. His latest threat was to imply that Turkey could actually declare war on Israel. He said, we have been to Libya, we have helped Azerbaijan win its war against Armenia in the Nagorno-Karabakh semi-autonomous region. Again, implying, of course, that one day we could come and attack Israel. First, I'm going to demonstrate to you that technically it's almost impossible for a military engagement to take place between Turkey and Israel. The reason I decided to do this video at the end is that once I started tunneling through the rabbit hole, I realized even though a war is impossible, there could be a lot of unpleasant developments for both sides. And this video is largely dedicated to answering the question of non-war hostilities. I'm going to talk about terrorist attempts or assassinations first. Then I'm going to move on to the broader political scene. And finally, I'm going to close out with the economic impact of a real serious prospect after the assassination of Hamas political bureau chief, Mr. Ismael Haniyeh, in Tehran. By the way, I am recording this video the day he was killed by presumably an Israeli missile in Tehran, where he was visiting to celebrate the inauguration of the new Iranian president, Mr. Peshkinyan, I believe. I hope I'm not butchering his name. If you look at the map, Turkey and Israel are so far away, given the configuration of their military sources, that perhaps, with the exception of exchanges of some missiles, a military engagement is impossible. Turkey doesn't have a blue water navy to reach the Israeli shore. Technically speaking, her aging F-16 fleet can reach the very northern tip of Israel to bomb a few targets, but they're certain to be brought down by the much bigger and battle-savvy Israeli jet fighters. Turkey could potentially try to ship arms to Gaza Strip. Then again, I believe Israel has an airtight embargo on all the outlets that might be a conduit for such an aid. So that also would be fairly futile. In other words, I simply don't see Turkey attacking Israel in any way. Yet, staying at the political dimension, there are a lot of really nasty things that can happen. First, of course, Turkey already has caused some damage to Israel when President Erdogan declared during the Madrid NATO summit that Turkey from then on will veto any military cooperation between NATO and Israel. Israel is not a NATO member, but it's considered a Western country, part of the Western culture. So there were a lot of military exchanges and cooperation. I don't really know just how deep that relationship goes, or whether Turkey's veto on such NATO engagements can be bypassed by members of NATO doing the same thing with Israel. Nevertheless, that's unpleasant. A much bigger threat, which has happened in the past, is some crazy loon or some lone wolf attacking Jewish targets in Turkey. Turkey is a small but influential Jewish community, numbering probably 20K or so. And in the past, terrorists have attacked Israeli synagogues and similar targets. Even though Turkish police and intelligence officers have been very good at stopping such um, attacks before they took place, this year, a suspected member of ISIS Khorasan branch has raided a church, killing an innocent civilian and wounding several. So I would not rule out the possibility of Israeli targets being attacked or, leading Israeli business persons being kidnapped by some terrorist organization. Another possibility is Israel targeting Hamas operatives who are still resident in Turkey. Hamas used to have a large presence in Turkey. Some of the top leaders used to live here or spend a lot of time between Istanbul, Turkey, and Doha, Qatar. But it is my understanding that after the terrible incident on 7th of October, Ankara has politely asked the leadership to leave the country voluntarily, and they abided by this request. I'm sure there are some Hamas members. I don't think they're influential or, high-ranking priorities for Israelis to take out. But if, Israel wants to annoy Turkey, it could do so. In this case, I suppose, assuming that Israel would also assume responsibility for such an assassination or attempt thereof, Turkey will have to declare war on Israel. Political ramifications go beyond that. The biggest political harm Turkey can do to Israel is through her capacity to raise the cause with all the Muslim nations and shaming them for not doing enough to stop the butchering of innocent Arab, Palestinian civilians in Gaza Strip. In some sense, Erdogan is out-Arabing all Sunni Arab nations in terms of agitating against Israel. This could have some repercussions. After years of infighting and mutual insults, Turkey has finally improved her relations with Gulf Arab countries as well as Egypt, and has great expectations of Arab investment into Turkey. Now, Turkey openly outracing the Sunni Arab nations in the Gulf in terms of blaming Israel and urging action, it could annoy Arabs. I don't think that would be very visible officially in the diplomatic channel, but to the extent Arabs had any realistic aims of investing into Turkish assets, their leadership would ask them to delay those. Similarly, Turkey has a very lucrative contracting business in these Arab countries. Once they were under embargo, now Turkish companies are getting new contracts. I really don't know the number, but yeah, I mean, the Arab leadership, the sheiks, the kings can unofficially bar Turkish companies from entering such tenders, which would be a tremendous loss. It could also poison the relationship between Turkey and the United States, which is currently at a waiting stage or in limbo, pending the American presidential elections. Erdogan never got along well with Biden, and I'm fairly sure if Kamala Harris becomes the next president of the United States, she will pretty much pursue the same foreign policy path that Biden had. So the relationship between Turkey and the United States will remain cordial, but there would be no new diplomatic or economic mileage out of it. For one issue, for instance, which could be solved if Trump were to be re-elected president is Turkey's possession of Russian-made S-400s, because of which Turkey has been kicked out of the fifth generation F-35 jet fighter program, and Turkey's requests to buy arms from American companies go through very lengthy delays. Now, Turkey insists that even though S-400s are fairly useless, as has been demonstrated during the Ukraine war, she is going to keep those. But I suppose Trump can persuade Mr. Erdogan to either send these to a third nation or turn over the operating control of these Russian-made missiles to a NATO officer from a fairly independent country, like one of the Scandinavian countries, which will solve the problem, in which case, as United States officials have openly said in the past, Turkey will be reinvited to the F-35 program. Broadly speaking, as far as I understand, Trump is strongly pro-Israeli. I don't know how much of it is because he wants to get the Israeli vote, how much of it is a genuine held belief to help out Israel. But generally, and I'm going to record a video on that, a Trump re-election is quote unquote a very positive thing for the relationship, which I'm also going to refer to in the next economics section. And Turkey blaming United States, for aiding Israel or carrying this fight to Washington, D.C. is going to be unpleasant. While Trump and Erdogan has gotten along exceptionally well, almost as well as the relationship between Putin and Trump, there has been one exception. When Turkey arrested an American clergyman, Mr. Brunson, Trump essentially sent a tweet saying, "I'll destroy you, man. Send the guy back." And Erdogan sent him back in 6 days. So Trump can show his teeth too. And Turkey is in a position where Erdogan expects a lot of financial investment from abroad, in particular from Anglo-Saxon countries, as well as some FDI, foreign direct investment. And as I've remarked in my past videos, we live in a kind of world where trade and investment relations are more and more determined by the friendship status of the recipient and the exporter. So improving Turkish-American relationship could also have positive spillover effects to Turkish economy and financial markets. And Turkey's open antagonism to Israel could mar that relationship and thwart or render Turkey's economic austerity program less effective in the medium term. But at the end of these, it's difficult. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot a few more items. Yeah, now I'm man, it's like 40 degrees outside and the humidity is out of this world. I have, both this device here, a fan, and air conditioner is going full speed, and my brain is still, hurting from the heat. Okay, let's move on to, one more thing. In general, even though Erdogan hates Israel and the Jews, his heart is not in this battle. The reason why he is being so public and insulting towards Israel is because of domestic competition. There has been several smaller Islamist parties in Turkey, none of which have moved the needle in the polls, but a new one called the New Welfare Party, chaired by the son of the legendary Islamist leader, Professor Necmettin Erbakan, has hurt AKP in the 31st of March local elections and is currently pulling 6% in the polls. And almost all of those votes are coming from AKP. New Welfare is, of course, rabidly anti-Israel. And Erdogan is essentially pushed for domestic reasons to be very open and antagonistic towards Israel. So The rhetoric could get very ugly, and I'm fairly sure you will read a lot of headlines if you're interested in this region that Turkey is doing this, Turkey is doing that. But as I've said, in the military and political dimensions, the damages are of secondary order, not too important to in any way incorporate in our plans. Now, economics is kind of different. Turkey has already banned all trade with Israel. I think our exports to Israel per annum were roughly $7.5 billion compared to imports of $5.5 billion. So we're net losers here. There is one exception. We have a pipeline that comes from Azerbaijan to the Mediterranean called Baku-Ceyhan, and Azerbaijan does ship some oil to Israel, which is replaceable. There's plenty of oil in the Mediterranean Sea right now. But if Turkey were to ban Azerbaijani oil shipments to Israel, that would hurt Azerbaijan. Since this is going to hurt Azerbaijan more than it would hurt Israel, I don't think Turkey would do that, but it's a possibility. Another possibility is banning Israeli tourists from coming to Turkey. This year's data is kind of sketchy. I really couldn't find any 2023 data. But in the past, in the recent years, Israeli tourists have risen as far as 700,000 per year. Knowing that Turkey hosts roughly 45 million tourists a year, this is really not that bad. It's not critical that we missed the Israeli tourists. Yesterday, Turkstat announced second quarter tourism revenue figures. Net tourism revenues were up by 16% in dollar terms vis-a-vis the same period of last year. So again, some loss, and Turkey can use every penny in terms of foreign trade, but not a huge blow. I suppose Turkey could also ban the sailing of any vessels from Black Sea destination to Israeli ports. I don't know if the current treaty governing the passageway, the straits, Bosphorus as well as Dardanelles would allow that, but I'm sure if Turkey wants to, she can do that. Once again, how much that would hurt Israeli trade, I honestly don't know. I suppose if Russians are shipping arms or other critical raw materials to Israel through Turkey, that could become a problem. Of course, from a psychological perspective or from the invisible's perspective, Jews, whether they're pro-Israel or not, are very influential in the Wall Street. And Turkey could annoy Jewish business people, Jewish fund managers, Jewish investment bankers to the point where these would unofficially hesitate or show reluctance to invest into Turkish assets. Once again, it could be important, but there's really no way to quantify any of these. Which brings us to the last and most important subject, which is not related to an issue directly between Turkey and Israel, but to the prospect of a broader Middle East war. Again, I'm not an expert on Middle East. I'm not gonna give you probabilities on the prospects of Israel and the Lebanese Hezbollah entering a full-scale war or Iran's involvement. I don't think either of these three parties have any interest in full-scale war. But strange things happen. I mean, when you pursue a policy of consciously escalating tensions to achieve some military or political goals, sometimes mistakes do happen and things get out of hand. But this is not the point of this video. The objective of this video is not to assess the possibility of a broader Middle East war, but simply to say that any further tensions that affect the ability of Iran to ship oil from its ports, or any kind of shortage or bottleneck in terms of Arab production of natural gas and oil, or any more sabotage attempts on the transport routes, which would raise the price of oil and natural gas, would be severely harmful to Turkish economy. So far, Brent reacted only very mildly to the assassination of Haniyeh. Yet, if there is a broader war, Brent could scale new highs. As a rule of thumb, every $10 increase in Brent raw adds roughly $3.5 billion to Turkish current account deficit. Roughly speaking, Turkey could probably handle a Brent price per barrel up to $100 for, let's say, 6 months or so, but any price above that or any duration of an oil rally beyond 6 months is going to cause inflation, and Turkey's current account deficits would widen again, which would once again render Mehmet Şimşek's economic austerity program much less effective. And finally, financial investments. I touched upon these, but nowadays the financial investment game is not only based on valuations, assessments of risk, etc., but there is always a political angle involved, even though that's not always expressed openly or show up in data. But in general, since Turkey gets most of her financial investments from Anglo-Saxon countries, Turkey picking up new fights with Israel, which may infect the relationship between Turkey, United States, or UK, would probably deter some fund managers from investing into Turkey. Once again, it's difficult to quantify. I started my career exactly 35 years ago when Saddam invaded Kuwait. The distance between Turkey and Kuwait is measured in thousands of nautical miles. Nevertheless, investors, in fear of that war spreading to Turkey, sold out Turkish stocks ferociously, so much so that Borsa Istanbul was in the middle of a tremendous rally, the first of its legendary bull rallies that see prices go up by 100% in dollar terms. And in a few months, there was not a single foreign investor left in Turkey. I think today's financial investors are much more knowledgeable and sophisticated in terms of geography and the political risks. But nevertheless, Turkey is the most liquid financial market in the Middle East region, much more so than Israel or Egypt or Jordan. And there's a tendency by fund managers to be regional investors, and when they want to get out of a region, they don't necessarily get out of the country, which is directly involved in hostilities or in crises, but from the most liquid countries. So that, again, would constitute a risk for Turkey. In general, to the extent any broader war in the Middle East reduces the risk appetite, currently stoked again by hopes of Fed cutting interest rates, would be bad for Turkey. We definitely need huge amounts of financial investment to keep the Turkish lira stable, to finance our current deficits, as well as to reduce bond yields so the Treasury can borrow at cheaper rates, which would eventually reduce the budget deficits. Thank you very much for watching another video, which was about nothing. But I'm glad I found a chance to express my views. Once again, if you like the content, please subscribe. And as importantly to me, share it with your friends. And do send me your comments. I read them religiously. Over the last 10 days, I was really struck by heat and wasn't very functional. So I was remiss in terms of putting new videos in my channel or responding to your comments. But I'm getting back on my feet thanks to my air conditioner, and I shall religiously reply to all of your comments. This has been a presentation of Real Turkey Channel by Atilla Yeşilada. I wish all of you a peaceful world and no more tragic and unnecessary human deaths.